I'm Elizabeth Ray.
I'm Alistair Stevens.
And Tom Cruise is Major Private William Cage in Edge of Tomorrow.
So I've got a high concept conceit for this podcast episode to go along with the high concept of the movie that we're discussing this week. Every time we hit an edit point, every time one of us mispronounces a word or we stumble over something, we go back to the beginning and start over. What do you say?
Absolutely not.
Can you imagine recording this podcast for the rest of your life?
For the rest of my natural life. No, thank you.
But you're so fired up about Tom Cruise movies here as we are rounding the corner toward the final furlong.
You know what? I really like this one, though.
This is great.
Is really cool. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, and you weren't wrong. I was not led astray. This was a cool movie, and Emily Blunt is untouchable.
Unbelievable.
She's so good in this.
Yeah.
I would never have cast her. I'm just shocked.
Yeah, she's extraordinary. I really do think that the casting director should get so much credit for the success of this film, because all the way down the line, you have to go deep, deep, deep into the bench to find actors who aren't just perfect. Just perfect. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. I don't know if I completely agree with you on that, but...
Ooh, who stands out for you?
I don't like Brendan Gleeson or Bill Paxton in this, and you love them both, I think?
Well, I mean, I do love Brendan Gleeson normally. Okay. He is filling shoes in this movie. He is just there. I think that basically anyone could have given that performance. I don't think we're really getting that special Brendan Gleeson magic.
Oh, I disagree. Because to me, it's like so Mad-Eye Moody. It's just like, here's Mad-Eye Moody, but he's in like camo.
Well, I'm confused then about why he's not your favorite thing about the film, because I think famously you kind of love Mad-Eye Moody.
No, famously I love the character of Mad-Eye Moody, but I don't love Brendan Gleeson's portrayal of Mad-Eye Moody.
So you don't love Brendan Gleeson in general?
I love him when he's being subtle. I love him in Banshees of Inisherin.
Sure, in his more naturalistic mode.
Yes, or when he's being funny.
Him in his genre movie mode is a little different.
It's a little much
for
me. Yeah. It's a little, chewing the scenery. It's a little much. It's a little extra.
Equally bewildered, though, that you don't love Bill Paxton in this movie.
Bill Paxton has the stupidest accent I have ever heard.
The best performance that Bill Paxton has ever given in a film. I will take no questions at this time. Okay. We've obviously got a lot to discuss about this film, and I cannot wait to get into it, but I guess we should zoom out a little bit and talk first about that high concept pitch for this movie.
Yeah.
How do you feel about time loop stories? How do you feel about your Groundhog Days?
You know, in general, I think I like them.
Yeah?
I've only seen Groundhog Day once, and it was a long time ago. So I know that that's like the iconic one, and we call them all Groundhog Day movies, I guess. But it's not the one that really sticks out in my brain.
No, which ones stick out to you?
Believe it or not, the one I really like is the Jake Gyllenhaal soldier one.
Source Code.
Source Code is the one I really like.
Spoilers kind of pulls a trick that is becoming more and more common in that it is eventually revealed to not really be a time loop movie. We kind of do some shenanigans in the third act to kind of reframe our understanding a little bit. Source Code is very good.
Source Code was good.
Source Code is legitimate. Run Lola Run kind of has the same approach. Happy Death Day from 2017 is very stupid, but very good.
Haven't seen it either.
Palm Springs is a kind of dual take on the same idea.
You got that one for me, but I haven't seen it yet.
Palm Springs is pretty good. It's pretty solid.
Okay.
If you can do the Andy Samberg of it all, then I think that Palm Springs
to do over and over again.
Can be, though. I think that he is actually pretty good in that movie.
Okay.
And Palm Springs is pretty enjoyable. But really, it's TV where we find the triumph
in TV,
of the
I always
story.
like it. I love the Supernatural one.
So good.
Every
The
time I hear the Asia song,
great.
Every time
Absolutely.
it takes me right back.
We do it in the Star Trek's Next Generation and Voyager and Discovery. We do it in Stargate SG-1. We do it in the X-Files, famously.
Yep.
We do it in Farscape. We do it in Fringe. We do it in one of the worst episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
What?
That's the one with the kitten poker, for those of you keeping track at home. It's a really workable conceit.
For basically any sci-fi show. Yeah.
And it allows you to do very silly things for not much money. Because these things functionally turn into bottle episodes, right? Like even in Edge of Tomorrow, which cost a genuinely staggering and, frankly, indefensible amount of money.
It does look very expensive.
It looks very expensive, but how many sets do we really have? There aren't that many.
Interesting.
There aren't that many different setups that we go through. So in general, this is a story structure that you are fond of? This is a story structure that you enjoy?
Yeah.
I should
Usually so.
mention, too, the TV show Russian Doll, which I know we watched the
Right.
first season of.
Yes, of course, Russian Doll.
Which is
Yeah.
also very inventive and good. And then, completely wastes its potential in its second season. The second season is so misguided. Like, there's just nowhere where you can take this idea, is the problem. These ideas are not terribly
They work
extensible.
so well as episodes or movies, but
Exactly
as a whole
right.
show, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting because we are constantly now quivering tremulously on the brink of a Edge of Tomorrow sequel.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm excited because I really like this movie,
It's gonna be
but
cool.
I don't know what you can do with it.
Yeah.
Really. Especially not
Yeah.
with the
I mean,
fairly
if
emphatic ending of this film.
True. But I can see us wanting to try and, like, figure out this technology for ourselves. If you can call it technology. I guess it's not really tech. It's like biology. But if we could try to, that's where I would go. It's like I would be having the military trying to figure out how to use this time loop reset.
Right. We've
for their super
recovered
soldiers.
alpha blood or whatever it is
Yeah,
that we
yeah,
need to fuel our super soldiers for a forthcoming conflict.
Absolutely.
Yeah, or there are just more Omegas that come to Earth, I guess, and we need
naturally.
the skills of the guy who's best at video games, because that's the other thing that this movie is doing.
That is true.
Is
It
literalizing
very
video game
gamey.
mechanics, yes. Learning patterns,
Wow.
learning strategies,
Very
learning how to...
astute. Yeah.
Well, that's, a fairly common bit of response to this film, and it's actually encoded into the backstory of both the film and the Japanese light novel that inspires it. It's kind of there from the jump as a way of approaching an action movie scenario, and it works really well, I think.
I think so, too.
This is not just one of the best time loop movies, but absolutely one of the best movies about video games without, weirdly, being a video game adaptation.
God, it is so video gamey. I can't believe I didn't land on that immediately, but yeah.
We'll
I don't
talk
play a
about
lot
it.
of video games, to be fair, but
And
yes.
certainly not this kind of video game.
Certainly
Not a
this
lot of
kind.
Call of Duty for you. Yeah, it's true.
No.
We'll talk about all of that as we get in. But first, I have to undertake the trailer game. So let's go. This summer, Starship Troopers meet Super Mario Brothers. Tom Cruise battles the alien menace across the beaches of Normandy, surrounded by sci-fi extravagance. Armored exosuits. An alien hive mind. Least convincingly of all, a united response to an existential threat. Because in this future where our lives and homes are at risk, one thing has truly united humanity. We are all hot for Emily Blunt. We may not be sure about the name of this film, but we are sure that it will keep you coming back and back and back for more. Edge of Tomorrow. So our story begins in 2004 with the publication of a Japanese science fiction light novel, which is a genre form in Japan, which is kind of a short YA-oriented novel, like around 50,000 words, usually at like what we would probably consider now a new adult market. It's that kind of segment of the marketplace there. This book is written by Hiroshi Sakurazaka. It is inspired by his experiences with video games and tells the tale of Keiji Kariya, a soldier caught in a time loop during a war with an extraterrestrial threat who grows closer to a kick-ass American veteran known as the Full Metal Bitch and learns how to beat the aliens through incremental improvement over many lives. The title of that book was All You Need Is Kill. Which, for a second, for a moment, was actually considered as the title of this film.
No, that's bad.
It was dropped because Warner did not like a movie with the word kill in the title.
Also fair,
which is kind of defensible, but also that's an adorably terrible title. I love it, but I do love it because it's bad.
Yes. Well, and it does have that sound of something that has been translated and something is lost in the translation, right?
An English language translation is released in July of 2009 and finds its way to the desk of producer Erwin Stoff of 3 Arts Entertainment, whereupon it is immediately optioned. Rather than secure funding on the strength of the option, though, they decide to write a spec script and shop it around, presumably because they believe that they are going to get more money for a spec script.
Sure.
Because once you've translated this and once you've kind of given it that Hollywood sheen, it is a much more marketable property. They hire writer Dante Harper, who worries that the story is too complex, but commits anyway and eventually turns in a finished script 8 months after being hired. Warner buys that script for $3 million in April of 2010, whereupon it languishes in production limbo. No
Yep.
one really wants to carry it forward. In fact, it makes it onto the blacklist of 2010, which is
Sure,
the
yeah.
famous collection of unproduced scripts. It's the most successful and interesting, I suppose, unproduced scripts in
Right.
Hollywood. It's collated every year. In August of 2011, though, Warner decides that they really are going to give it a shot, and they hire Doug Lyman to direct. Lyman was born in 1965 in New York City. He starts making short films while in high school, then begins the student TV channel while he is studying at Brown. He does postgrad work at the University of Southern California, and he's hired right out of school to direct his first film, Getting In, a black comedy starring Andrew McCarthy, who murders the candidates who are going to take the spot that he wants at a prestigious university. So it's like a real black comedy. It's a really interesting kind of film. It doesn't make much of an impression, though, but his reputation is such that he's able to secure private funding from a friend of his father in order to produce Jon Favreau's debut script, Swingers, in 1995.
Yeah. Okay.
With, of course, the proviso that he'll give Favreau the money to make the film if he himself gets to direct it. Which... a little shady.
A little.
But
okay. Yeah.
He secures $250,000 and makes the film. The movie is a huge hit. It makes the career of Jon Favreau. It makes the career of Vince Vaughn. Like, it is a big, big hit. And Lyman, after recouping his investment of $250,000 of borrowed money, goes out and negotiates a distribution deal for $5.5 million, most of which goes to him. Very little of which goes to Jon Favreau, who does not then have contact with Doug Lyman for a decade.
I'll bet. That's shady. I don't like that at all.
Patched it up after the fact, but yeah, they were on the outs with each other for a long time.
Jon Favreau doing okay right now, but yeah.
Jon Favreau doing just fine, it turns out. Yes. The extremely wealthy Jon Favreau.
But yeah, that first 10 years or so, I'd have been pissed.
Yeah, it's not a great way of conducting your entry into the business here. And a lot of this is just Lyman apparently trying to get out from the shadow of his father, who is a very well-respected lawyer. He's extremely famous and was involved in the prosecution of the Iran-Contra affair back in the 1980s, if you recall. So he's like a kind of quasi-public figure who's also very well-respected in his field. And Lyman apparently really wants to establish himself as a player in Hollywood. He seems, in fact, if anything, more interested in establishing himself as a player in Hollywood than in, making films.
Right, yeah.
He then directs the crime comedy Go in 1999, which time has not been kind to, I'm afraid to say, and then The Bourne Identity with Matt Damon in 2002, which is a famously combative film in terms of his relationship with the studio. He is not asked back, though, because he secured the rights for the Bourne books in the first place, he gets an executive producer credit and a lot of money on every subsequent Bourne movie. No matter how badly production goes, no matter how badly he conducts himself on set, Lyman always seems to come out of these things with a very good payday.
Paycheck, yeah.
After that, he directs a film that we never talk about here on the podcast, a movie called Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Then he kills Hayden Christensen's career stone dead with the movie Jumper. He did what George Lucas could not do, even at the height of his success. Kills Hayden Christensen's career for like a decade. Have you seen Jumper?
No.
Okay.
I haven't seen that one.
That's a bullet dodged. We have, of course, been kind of orbiting Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
We have.
For the last little while. Doug Lyman does kind of inadvertently, in a Frankensteinian kind of way, create Brangelina. Jumper is absolutely terrible. Like, not to be unnecessarily unkind to Hayden Christensen, to be completely necessarily unkind to Hayden Christensen. Sure. It's not his fault that that film is so bad, and it's not his fault that he is so bad in it. Kind of like the Star Wars prequels, honestly.
Yeah. He apparently needs an actor's director to be any good, because I've certainly seen him be good.
I have certainly seen him
be bad
too, yes. But yeah, when he doesn't have an actor's director, when he has directors who are openly contemptuous of actors, like George Lucas.
Yep.
Yeah. He maybe doesn't give his best work under those circumstances. We're going to have the, let's say, opportunity to talk about Lyman's career again when he returns to the Cruiserverse for American Made in just a few weeks' time. He's going to come back for that one. Let's try and cover the production story here quickly because it is Tangled. So Dante Harper writes this script. It is bought. Lyman is hired. Warner hires screenwriter and producer Joby Harold to rewrite the script, which he does. Lyman tries to hire Brad Pitt for the lead role, but he turns it down. Ooh. Cruise is then locked in December of 2011. By April of the following year, Emily Blunt is hired too. The problem is, when you've got Cruise and you've got Emily Blunt, the original script is now not really appropriate because these two actors are older than you would have thought. They're older than the original casting would have suggested. So we have to go back to the script. Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman, who wrote Mission Impossible 3 for J.J. Abrams, who are the Star Trek guys, they're brought in to rewrite the script, which they do. British writers Jez and John Henry Butterworth are brought in to rewrite the script, which they do. Screenwriter Simon Kinberg, who is Lyman's guy and who wrote Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Jumper, is brought in to rewrite the script, which he does, and then 8 weeks before the start of principal photography, half the script is thrown out. Cruise's guy, Christopher McQuarrie, comes in for the rescue. He does a last-minute rewrite. This apparently is where all of the humor in the story comes from. All of the jokes can apparently be traced to the Christopher McQuarrie script. Cruise brings him in because he is concerned that if you try and play this movie straight, it will not work.
I think he's right.
Absolutely
Completely correct. Yeah.
Very strong. Despite all this, production begins on October 1st, 2012, 2.5 months after the end of principal photography for Oblivion, without a finished script.
Whoa.
Lyman shows up on set at Leavesden Studios in London on the Warner sound stages where they had shot all of Harry Potter and like a million things besides. He shows up on the beach set that they have built there. This Normandy beach set. This is not real. This is a set that they built on a giant soundstage because they had to control it in order to be able to shoot over and over and over and over,
Definitely.
right? So they construct this set. He goes in, they complete the first day of shooting. He scraps every second of film and spends the second day shooting everything that they should have shot on the first day. And that just sets a pattern. Studio executives are nervous after the first day of shooting. They're supposed to spend 2 weeks on that soundstage getting everything that they need from the beach. They end up spending 3 months.
Oh, yeah. That's not good.
According to a contemporary story in the LA Times by Chris Lee, quote, "This filmmaker has condemned himself to a cycle of creative conflict he readily acknowledges follows a certain pattern, in the process alienating friends and creating powerful Hollywood enemies." End quote.
Yeah.
So they're basically behind schedule before they even get started. Lyman splits his production team into 2 shooting units, both of which he coordinates. So they wind up shooting 7 days a week. He has just completely thrown out the production schedule and is scrambling from the jump to try and get this shot in time. He still runs 20 days over production, even though he's working 7 days a week and shooting with 2 simultaneous units. And it's easy to come away from this, I think, with a critical view of Lyman, which obviously is partially justified, right? Because he's not David Fincher. He's not Nancy Meyers. He's not a perfectionist. He's not doing this because he wants something very specific. He's not even Kubrickian in the sense that he wants to find something magical in the moment. He's just kind of underprepared, and he wants to allow for this workshoppy kind of improvisational environment, which is impossible when you are building a film this dependent on CGI. 9 different effects houses contribute effects to this film. And you're right, in the end, it looks gorgeous.
It really, really does. And you know, I'm always saying that CGI sucks and I hate it and it throws me out, but this looks great. This is really cool. The mimics are awesome.
They are fantastic.
They're really cool.
Absolutely fantastic. I think almost all of the effects in this film really, really hold up. I think it has a very unique look. It has a real sensibility. I credit a lot of that to Dion Beebe, who is the Australian DOP who works as a cinematographer on this film. He works repeatedly with Jane Campion and with Rob Marshall. He shoots Chicago and Memoirs of a Geisha and Into the Woods and Mary Poppins Returns, also with Emily Blunt, of course. And he shoots the live-action Little Mermaid. He is also the cinematographer who comes onto Collateral after Michael Mann has his very public fight with Paul Cameron. So we've seen his work before. And when you see that, you can see, I think, a certain commonality. There's a desaturated kind of masculine austerity to the way that these shots are framed and composed. And I really like the way that he's kind of bringing in those elements. It gives the movie more structure than the movie itself actually has, just because the shots themselves feel so structural. You like the way this movie looks?
I do, very much. It is masculine, definitely, and it is like video gaming. Again, like you say, it's so obvious. But overall, it's super compelling. It never throws me out the way that CGI almost always does. So somebody was doing really great work.
A lot of people were doing really great work. Yeah, we've got one team working on the mimics because we don't want them to look like any aliens that have ever been in anything. They feel like they kind of remind me of, the Venom symbiote from Spider-Man 3, from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. There's a way of it looking and flicking and moving in a really physical and unpleasant way that it just really works for me throughout. I think the designs in general are extremely strong. We've got a completely different unit working on the designs for the exosuits, all the various structures
exosuits
of
are so
exosuits
cool.
that we get, which
Yeah.
are so awesome, weighed 80 pounds each, even when
Wow.
they're stripped down to like their bare minimum so the actors can still move and work.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, in between takes, are hooked into chains that are suspended from a gantry just to take the weight of the suits off of their shoulders.
Yeah.
But at least you're doing it for 20 days longer than you intend.
Holy
and for
smokes. Yeah.
months and months and months on the beach. And this is really the thing. You know, I mentioned earlier that one of the things that makes these stories, time loop stories in general, so attractive to especially TV producers is that they're cheap. You're necessarily limiting the number
Yeah.
of sets, the number of moving parts, right? You're just effectively shooting the same setups over
Right.
and over and over again. And the story is very contained, so you can do it for not much money. That's the problem when you have a guy like Doug Lyman, though, behind this film, is that the budgets get out of control. This should have been, even looking the way that it does, a $60 and $80 million picture at the time. Instead, it comes in at almost $175 million.
Ooh,
dollars.
that's tough.
And Warner can see this happening. They can see this production just bleeding money. And they do what Warner did in 2014, which is double down.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to limit the expense, they decide instead that this has to be a billion-dollar franchise. This has to be a property that they can just sell and sell and sell. So they invest $100 million into marketing this film. Surprising no one. It's kind of a disappointment when it comes out, at least at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about all of that, but we have to, of course, talk about our cast. We have to, of course, begin with the genuinely brilliant Emily Blunt, who we love, right?
I think so. I remember seeing her, well, first hearing her performance touted in A Quiet Place, and that really did blow my mind. And I was pleasantly surprised by her in the stupid Mary Poppins movie, which is not good, but which I watched with my kids nonetheless. And she's got that like sexy thing that Mary Poppins has that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean?
I do, very much.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins Returns is a lot of individual people giving very good performances and doing very good work in a film that ultimately does not know what it is or why it exists.
Yeah, yeah. Ben Whishaw is there,
Ben
being
Wishaw's
heartbreaking as
Emily
he always
Mortimer.
is.
Yeah.
Emily Mortimer,
But you know what you don't need from Ben Whishaw in Mary Poppins Returns is an angst about the human condition. Like, he's delivering an absolutely magnetic performance that should not be in that film because that film cannot bear the weight of that performance.
Yeah,
it's
funny.
Wild. Emily Mortimer, Lin-Manuel Miranda, of course,
just
really hamming it up. Like, that's too much theater kid energy even for me, quite honestly.
Even in Mary Poppins,
But Blunt is fantastic. And, you know, we don't like to define women in terms of their relationship with the man in their life. But of course, we have to acknowledge the thing about Emily Blunt is she's Stanley Tucci's sister-in-law.
It's true.
The most important thing about Emily Blunt is that she is the sister of Felicity Blunt, who is married to the Tucci.
Stanley Tucci. We love it.
And they are adorable.
They're so cute together.
If you haven't seen Stanley Tucci, well, this is the problem, right? Is that his show about Italy is impossible to see now because it was produced in that 6-month window where CNN thought they were going to platform original programming. Yeah.
I wish that had happened. I wanted that, and I wanted the Alison Roman show.
The Alison
which I
Roman show.
Will never see.
Which they shot.
They shot it.
They shot it. They have edited it, and now they are never going to release it because CNN Plus died a death.
So bad.
This industry is maybe not sustainable, you guys. Maybe we have lost our way. I don't know. Stanley Tucci, of course, is terrific. Felicity Blunt, by all accounts, is terrific. But yes, Emily Blunt is also, of course, paired very famously with John Krasinski and works with him pretty consistently. I think that she is terrific, and my esteem for her is only rising the older that she gets. I think that
I agree.
She is revealing herself to be capable of a specificity that did not seem to be a part of her repertoire early in her career. It seemed as though she was very much a one-mode kind of actor, someone you could hire who would do
early stuff?
one thing. Well, let's get into her biography. I guess she's born in 1983 in London. She's encouraged to take up acting as a teenager as a way of combating a severe stutter. To this day, she stutters when she is nervous. And to this day, she works with charities dedicated to like speech therapy and helping children overcome problems with communication. She's very cool about that. She attended Hurtwood House, which is a fairly prestigious sixth form boarding school famous for its acting program in England. Then she takes a school play from Hurtwood House all the way to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival that year, where she is spotted by an agent and signed immediately.
Wow.
She graduates high school and starts auditioning for roles on stage and screen. She breaks first on the stage. She wins a Best Newcomer for her role in Peter Hall's The Royal Family, the first year career that she is out in the West End. She plays Juliet. She plays the Celtic Queen Boudica, as well as Catherine Howard in Henry VIII. She makes her mark in film, of course, in 2006 in The Devil Wears Prada, in which she is just outstanding, and perhaps is most notable for all of that for co-hosting the Best Costume Award at the Academy Awards the following year with Anne Hathaway in Character, where she is just lovely. And she is a consistent highlight at the Oscars and has been for almost 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think basically every year she is just lovely. Yeah. For a few years, she's pretty consistently, I think, giving quietly the best performance in some movies that do not deserve her. She's in Gulliver's Travels, which is absolutely terrible, but she's pretty good. She's in The Adjustment Bureau, which is a much better film than Gulliver's Travels, but is still not quite good enough, but she's lovely in it. She's in Salmon Fishing in the Yemen. And then Edge of Tomorrow comes along just as she's transitioning into these more mature and confident roles. This is the same year that she voices Noroko in the Ghibli movie The Wind Rises and appears in Into the Woods. The next year she does Sicario. Then she does The Girl on the Train. 2017, she gives a genuinely great voice performance as the villain with the babyface turn, Tempest Shadow, in the My Little Pony movie.
Sure, yeah.
And then in 2018, she's in A Quiet Place and Mary Poppins Returns. And from there, she is a woman in charge of her own cinematic destiny in a way that, well, God, no one is. I can't think of another actor at her level who is so consistently cast as a lead. Just cast as the head of a franchise. She's in Jungle Cruise, and she's in Pain Hustlers, and she's in The Fall Guy. She's kind of wasted in Oppenheimer. But that's not
also
her
everyone
fault.
talks about how wonderful her performance was in that. So
I do not agree that performance is as wonderful as people thought that it was. I'm glad that she got nominated for her first Academy Award for that role. She has yet, of course, to win. And it's not, that she's bad in Oppenheimer. It's just, I wish that character were more developed. I think if you're going to cast Emily Blunt, then maybe scrap the whole thing and just tell us the story from her point of view. I could be here for that. I think she is terrific, and I'm very much looking forward to everything that she does next.
Agreed. How
do you like her chemistry with Cruise? She is famously a public fan of Tom Cruise. She will take every opportunity to talk about working with him, to talk about how much she likes him, to talk about how much she enjoyed working with him as a part of this shoot, even though she is very cagey about enjoying this shoot in general.
Yeah,
she
naturally.
Absolutely praises Cruise. They are apparently still in touch, and they are both talking publicly about wanting to make that aforementioned sequel to this film as soon as his schedule opens up. Do you like their chemistry together in this movie?
It's so interesting because they work so hard, she especially, to try to assert that there is no chemistry. So she's kind of like playing this double role where she's obviously attracted to Cage, but trying really hard not to be. And I think she nails that at basically every turn. I have to say, though, when she finally does kiss Cage, I don't like it.
The very controversial
Is
kiss.
it? I'm so glad.
It
doesn't belong there.
A lot of critics felt the same way.
Wow.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
Well, I feel strong about
up
this.
to that moment
is so great.
Good.
Yeah. I completely agree. Why did you do it?
Undermotivated, unearned.
Totally.
Well, because I think we're trying to land an emotional arc which we, the audience, have seen, but which she as a character is completely oblivious to. She is unaware that they have developed this relationship over weeks or months of his blurred across the timeline life. And I think we're pandering to the audience there. We have watched these two people together grow closer and closer and closer, even though they themselves have not grown closer and closer. And kiss people. People should kiss people. I think it's completely fine. I've got no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely pro-kissing. Kiss at every opportunity. But it is undermotivated, and the way that the score rises, it is a real moment of cowardice for this film. I think in
so
that
too.
moment, it is really pandering to the lowest expectations of the audience.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
And it makes also, I think, when he returns back for her at the end, even weirder. It's already a choice to have him come back and like try to meet her fresh at the end. It's already like, I don't know how I feel about this. You have some serious trauma bonding that has happened. Maybe just let this woman live her life, But the kiss then like extra complicates that because like, oh no, because they're already in a relationship, but they're not.
They're emphatically not.
Yeah.
No. And now they're never going to go through that crucible
that
they've been through. Yeah.
I kind of hope that she just absolutely turns him down completely and he never gets a date.
I couldn't find a record on the cinema score of this particular movie. The cinema score, of course, gauging how the audience feels the moment that it walks out of the theater.
Ah.
But that little epilogue makes a number of strong choices, which I think are almost all misguided. I don't think that he should go to her. I don't think that she should fail to recognize him. I don't think that he should
Yeah, it doesn't make
smirk
sense that... Yeah.
and have that be the last shot of your film.
I know. It's a mistake.
It's a wild failure,
Yeah.
right? It's like you got the ball to the 99-yard line and just
spiked it.
Just spiked it up into the crowd.
Yeah.
It's such a weird failure of comprehension, right? You do not understand what this film
Right,
is.
and the things that are good.
Which makes me think that this film was very much constructed in the edit.
And, you know, I have to say that overall, the editing is really masterful.
Extraordinary.
And it wastes no time. I was ready to be a little annoyed because when they're poorly done, you get bored really fast. And I really did not want to get bored with all of the time jumps.
Yeah.
But they ellipse so much time and just get right on to the heart of things and trust the audience to keep up. And I can. I'm a smart person watching this movie.
Yeah.
I was so glad that they did that.
Did you find any moment where you felt that the repetition was weighing you down? Was there any point at which you felt, did we really have to do this again?
Only the jumping from the airplane and everybody taking so long to jump and him taking so long to jump and the
Right.
wires or whatever. Also because I didn't quite understand like the mechanics of that jump.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
It's not fully realized on screen, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get into the edit, I think, a little more carefully as we move through the film. But first of all, we have to talk about the brilliant Bill Paxton. We have to talk about this extraordinary performance. He is born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1955, which makes him only 7 years older than Cruise, that you would never think so watching this film.
Mhm.
And he is 2 years younger than Bill Pullman, about which no more shall be said. Weird trivia about Bill Paxton. Do you know this about Bill Paxton? He was present in Dallas when John F. Kennedy was shot.
Oh, I didn't know
There
that.
are pictures, many photographs of that day where he is being held up on his dad's shoulders.
Wow.
Just a part of the crowd.
Wild.
Right before the fateful incident itself. Yeah.
Mhm.
After graduating high school, Paxton goes to study at Richmond College in London, where he, a high school friend from Texas, and another young Texas kid start making their own Super 8 movies rather than, I
Cute.
presume, talking to British girls. I don't know what they were doing in London making Super 8 movies. That's fine. He moves from there to LA. He's intent on making his own movies and building a career as a director, but he's turned down by all of the film schools to which he applies. So he does the normal thing, the obvious thing, and decides to become a movie star instead.
Yeah.
He gets a small role in The Terminator in 1984, from which he forges a lifelong friendship with James Cameron, who brings him back for Aliens in 1986, where he gets one of the most memorable roles in a film that is just stuffed full of memorable roles. Hudson is such a memorable character.
Mhm.
Every line delivery is so pitch perfect. He's just magnetic on screen.
Agreed.
That gets him a lot of attention, and he works a lot over the next few years, but it isn't until the mid-1990s that we really hit his golden age. True Lies in 1994.
So great.
Apollo 13 in 95.
Oh my God.
Twister
Not his best work.
in 96.
Not his best work.
Titanic in 97.
Great.
You can, even if you're so inclined, throw in Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan in 1998. He goes diving to the real Titanic with James Cameron in 2003 for Ghosts of the Abyss, the documentary, which is an astonishing thing to watch. And he is so charming and simultaneously comfortable slipping into a narrative role, because he is himself in this documentary, but he is also narrating the documentary.
Cool.
So he will slip into a narrative role and then slip out of it in a way that is, I don't know, kind of charmingly abashed. Like he's very aware of his own modulation into performance in a way that I find really, really fascinating.
That's funny because that reminds me of his character in Titanic when he's doing the whole thing with the camcorder. Here she rests on the bottom of the sea. And then he turns off. He's like, well, that's enough of that bullshit. I always like that line. It's fun.
It might be the best moment in the framing device of Titanic. It might be the most like weight-bearing, load-bearing line, because...
And you don't stay on the framing device, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
really. I don't think you need it. And I think that it
was just so, I don't
think
know.
it's
That
like,
movie
I think it's good.
Sculpted so much of what I think about, like stories and entertainment. It's really hard for me to think about that movie without it, I suppose.
I think that you can defend every aspect of the framing device for Titanic as a piece of work unto itself. I think you can make that film. I would be interested in seeing that film, in someone remembering Titanic. but it's Titanic. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to frame it out.
You
It's a
don't
story
need it.
literally everyone knows. Like, the only thing that the frame does in Titanic, I think, is because we can, with a fairly light heart, right, with a fairly jovial tone, because we are so removed from it historically speaking,
Mhm.
we get to frame out exactly what happens mechanically to the ship.
That
so
is
we get
true,
to
which was cool.
understand the like
Yeah.
structural failure of the ship
Right.
before a long time before we get to the actual
Yeah.
disaster itself. So we don't have to have anyone on board. We don't have to have Bernard Cornwell delivering all of this awful exposition in that moment. Instead, we get to, it's already in our heads.
It's already
and
there.
that's the thing that James Cameron does. Like, that man will like hand you the schematic for the film without you ever being aware that he's doing it.
Yeah.
And then as you move through, you're already navigating by it. And he's an incredibly gifted filmmaker who I wish would make things other than Avatar.
Yeah, me
at this
too.
point.
I like him more and more as a person as he's getting older. I think I've said before that I've seen him do interviews where he's a real dick. Like, he's so douchey in his early, even like 10, 20 years ago talking. And then suddenly, recently, he's just getting a little woke. He's just getting to be a cool guy, and I appreciate listening to him now.
Famously terrible on sets,
right?
Famously terrible with women,
yes,
especially women that he did not respect as like hard asses. Like, if you could, as Sigourney Weaver did, like demonstrate that you are, forgive me, a bitch, right? That's the word that he would use. That's like how he views like really hard-edged women. If you can demonstrate that, then you're worthy of his respect. But if you can't, like Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio famously in The Abyss, then he has got no time and no respect for you.
Yeah,
and that does very much seem to have softened. And that's great because, hey, we can all stand improvement. We can all stand transformation and growth.
It's nice to see people change.
Yeah. What's funny about Paxton showing up in Edge of Tomorrow is that though this is a long way past his real heyday, this is a really, really good year for him, because in this year, 2014, along with Edge of Tomorrow, he does 6 episodes of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's in Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's in $1 Million Arm, which is the What If We Could Do Moneyball Again movie, where they send John Hamm to India to hire Indian cricket players to come be baseball pitchers. Based on a true story.
That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, he's good in that. That's actually...
Sure. I love John Hamm, too.
The problem with that film, it's a good film that's not Moneyball.
Yeah.
And when you're
Moneyball's
not
so
Moneyball,
good. Just let
it's
it go.
hard to make the argument to not watch Moneyball.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Yes.
So Paxton has this like really great like late era swing here in 2014, and just really kind of sets... unfortunately, kind of sets his legacy here in this year, because tragically, Bill Paxton dies in 2017 at the age of 61 as a consequence of a botched heart surgery.
God, so terrible.
His family sues both the anesthetologist and the hospital, and both cases are settled very generously in the family's favor. And just really sad.
That is really sad.
A lot of people came out to dedicate films to him. A lot of people, his son is still working. His son shows up, of course, in Twisters, which we just saw in the theater. It's just a great loss, because you feel like he could have done another 20 years of really interesting character work. And it's just such a shame not to have that. It's one of the few things that I'm really interested about in Avatar 2, The Way of Water. I guess just Avatar, The Way of Water. No, numeral on that. I'm not sure. But that film is dedicated to both Bill Paxton and to James Horner, who of course has also passed. And you feel the weight of that, I think. Unfortunately, we've discussed Bill Paxton fairly recently over on a bonus episode that we did over on the Patreon, a Next Word Insider, where we chatted a little about Twisters. Yes. Mere moments after walking out of the movie theater seeing it opening weekend, and talked a very little about 1996's Twister, the original film, in which Bill Paxton is not good.
We don't love him in that. Again, he's done extraordinary work. Across the board, we love him. But in that, he's maybe, you called him a little sleepy? He's a little sleepy.
Just real sleepy. And he's just not... He's neither G-shucks enough nor slick enough to work in that. I just think he's bad casting in that role. And unfortunately, he's opposite Helen Hunt, who is delivering like few people have ever delivered in history. She's so terrific. I will commend Paxton for Apollo 13, where he is absolutely at the table with the biggest boys and is so good in that movie. Just wall-to-wall great performances in that film. The other person, of course, that we have to talk about is Brendan Gleeson. This is his 3rd Tom Cruise movie, believe it or not, because of course he's in John Woo's Mission Impossible 2 in, again, a weirdly miscast role. I'm not sure why you would go to Brendan Gleeson to play that role in particular in Mission Impossible
it's
2.
a little
but
yawny for him. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, he's not bringing it. You're right. Neither that fire nor that wit and charm and whimsicality for which he's so well known. He also has a very minor role as a policeman. Literally, it doesn't have a name. The role is just policeman in Far and Away, which I didn't know. So that's exciting.
That's too cute.
Gleeson's born in Dublin in 1955. He studies at University College Dublin and graduates with a BA in English and in Irish. He began taking acting jobs when he could, supporting himself as a high school teacher for a few years before committing full-time to his acting career in 1991. Far and Away is his third movie role. In 1995, he's in Braveheart. In 96, he's in Michael Collins, of course. But it's not till the 2000s that he really gets the attention he deserves. AI, 28 Days Later, Gangs of New York, Harry Potter, of course. In 2008, he appears with Colin Farrell and Martin McDonagh's In Bruges, which builds this working relationship with both Farrell and McDonagh, which will pay off in 2022 when he is finally nominated for an Academy Award for The Banshees of Inisherin. Like Blunt, one nomination, no wins. No Oscar statuary in the main cast of this film, which is wild. Paxton was never even nominated. Which really is crazy. He won a few SAG awards, but they were all ensemble SAG awards. Like he won as a part of the ensemble for Apollo 13.
Of course.
But
well deserved.
I do like ensemble awards. I think the Oscars should have one.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think that, casting is so difficult, and casting for really interesting chemistry is nigh on impossible.
Completely agree.
And when you do it, it can really transform a film.
Yeah.
So as I said, the movie shoots entirely in the UK, mostly at Leavesden. It takes a long time. The film is scored by Christoph Beck, the Canadian conductor who scores, well, God, so much. The aforementioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer, among other things. Under the Tuscan Sun, The Hangover, Date Night, because we haven't mentioned it yet this week, Burlesque. He writes the score for Frozen and for its sequel, Hot Tub Time Machine and its sequel, Ant-Man and both of its sequels, and he writes the score for the very lovely Peanuts movie from 2015.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that one, but you said it was
really
adorable.
Good and charming and lovely and very true to the spirit of Peanuts, which, I am such a colossal Schultz fan. I've loved Peanuts since I was, old enough to read comic strips.
Right.
And I absolutely love it. And it's so good to see the spirit of, the 1970s TV specials really coming through in this weird and interesting approach to 3D animation too. When you render the Peanuts characters in 3D, you expect it to be weird, and it's not. And the fact that it's not is perhaps even weirder. It's just a genuinely lovely, very, very gentle film. I'd recommend it as a Christmas watch to just about anyone, even though it's not specifically a Christmas movie. So as I said, Warner decides to double down on their commitment to Doug Liman and to this film and spend $100 million marketing the movie. Lyman wants the movie to be retitled Live, Die, Repeat. Warner objects, but takes that and turns it into a tagline for the film, though after its somewhat lackluster box office performance, that tagline would be used so prominently on the DVD marketing in order to cynically trick the good shoppers at your local Walmart into thinking that this is a film that they hadn't heard disappointing things about, that some people think that the movie was in fact retitled. It was never retitled. The film has always been called Edge of Tomorrow. It's just that Live, Die, Repeat was so big on the DVD case in particular that it was rebranded. In some markets, it has been released to streaming services in particular as Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, which I think we can all agree is the worst possible version.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Here's the thing, none of these titles are good. Like, I'm defending Edge of Tomorrow as the best of these titles, but it still stinks.
Yeah.
It's
and
bad.
I couldn't think of it. The other day I was trying to talk with some regulars at work about this episode coming up, and I could not land on it. And we were all trying to get there, and we all knew it had something to do with tomorrow, but we weren't really sure. We were confusing it with that end of the world hurricane climate change movie with Jake Gyllenhaal, which also
The
is
Day
about
After Tomorrow?
The Day After Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow.
Not ideal.
Not ideal, it turns out, yeah. Like, naming is so hard.
It is so hard, yeah.
But also so important. So as I say, the movie comes out to a fairly muted response, and in no way should this movie be construed as a disaster. Not only did it make its money back, as we'll get to in just a moment, but critically the response was fairly positive. Not like an A+ movie, but oftentimes a B+, A- kind of movie, which I kind of think is where this film belongs, honestly. But the word of mouth was just so dismissive that it really hurt the film's run at the box office, and then, as I say, really hurt home video sales on DVD for a while. What's so interesting is that by 2022, when the new Blu-ray package was released, the film had been retitled Edge of Tomorrow. And Live, Die, Repeat does not appear on the cover because it has become this cult thing. Like, people have
It
really
should kind of
come
be a cult
around
movie, I think.
historically on this
Yeah.
film. Yeah, I think that people slept on it. As you know, I've been saying over and over again as we've been coming through this series, I've been looking forward to talking about this film literally since the beginning of our run here on The Last Star in Hollywood. And I'm so glad that it holds up. The movie premieres...
Yeah, I know you were worried about it last night. You hadn't watched it yet, and you were like, what if it's bad? But it wasn't.
Well, and we've both been, as I'm sure the listener at home can hear, we're both kind of laboring under a little bug. There's something going around.
Just a little something.
Our energy's a little low. Our voices are a little fried. And I came into where you were watching the film last night, and you looked kind of miserable. And I thought, oh no, is this movie terrible? Are you hating every minute
unrelated.
of it? An unrelated malaise. The movie premieres in London on May 28th, 2014, and it's released wide in the US on June 6th, where it debuts at number 3 at the box office, which is a bad sign. Well, it's right behind the second week of the Disney villain movie Maleficent. And at number 1,
that was a big deal.
Also new this week, making almost twice as much money as Edge of Tomorrow, the Josh Boone adaptation of John Green's The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, damn. Those kids going to movie theaters.
So they literally
Those
knew
young adults.
day one that this film was not going to be the success that Warner was banking on.
That's tough.
Yeah. X-Men Days of Future Past.
Lose to a weepy.
Right?
Yeah.
A YA weepy.
A YA weepy. Ooh, that's tough.
X-Men Days of Future Past, which is maybe the last good X-Men movie, is certainly the last good movie so far. That's in at number 4. A Million Ways to Die in the West is number 5. The Gareth Edwards Godzilla is number 6. That's the
so many Godzillas.
Sally Hawkins, Elizabeth Olsen Godzilla. That one's fine. It's okay. It's okay. At number 9, in its 5th week, having made $10 million of its own money, is Jon Favreau's Chef. It's a Cubano. It's a Cubano.
Like Chef. It's not
Chef is
great,
very stupid.
but I like it.
But it is. Chef
I just enjoy watching it.
If you could...
Enjoyed.
Sure.
Past tense.
Yeah.
Would not
you don't go back to it over and over? Every Thursday
No.
night. It's Chef night. What do you want to do? If you could somehow, bodily transform Jon Favreau into a film, it would be Chef.
Yeah,
like, he's really delivering in that movie. And it's a sweet, endearing little film, but it's wild that the same week that Edge of Tomorrow comes out, Jon Favreau's just quietly making his own money in his own film before he goes off to just unbelievable box office success. That man has made so much money working for Disney.
For Marvel. Yeah.
Well, he also directed the live-action Lion King adaptation.
Shoot. Yes, and Star Wars something or other that he helmed. I'm going to prove the things I do not know. The Baby Yoda one.
The Baby Yoda, The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian. Yeah.
Really wanted to just let you hang out there. You were having so much fun searching for it. I really liked it.
I was going to like Sentinel or Centurion, but that's a new one, right? The Last...
No, The Acolyte is the new one.
What's the one right before that one?
The Last Jedi is the movie.
No. I'm feeling something like a Last Centurion or a man. It doesn't matter.
I don't think so. But
who knows?
Yeah. Oh, you think of Book of Boba Fett?
I just can't keep track these days and have no wish to.
You know what? That's
but
a very responsible approach.
I have seen a lot about The Acolyte on Threads, and now I know what the hell they're talking about because I'm just like, not watching that. Don't know. Star Wars. Okay.
So you've seen a lot of people on Threads saying that they are not watching The Acolyte, and that has told you everything that you need to know about
watching The Acolyte.
Your response was, I'm not watching that.
Exactly,
okay.
That was my response.
Sorry. I was interpreting that as reported dialogue.
Hilarious. Wow.
Edge of Tomorrow's final budget was $176 million plus $100 million for marketing, so it makes $371 million worldwide, which, again, because of that massive marketing budget, is seen as underperformance, but they do at least make their money back. Despite this, there have been rumors since 2015 of a sequel tentatively titled Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat, which is terrible.
I'm sorry, what?
Live, Die, Repeat, and Repeat was the floated title for the sequel to this film.
How about The Edge of Yesterday? I already did it better.
Oh, it's Tom Cruise just remembering yesterday? Several reports suggested that when Cruise signed his development deal with Warner in January of this year, the Edge of Tomorrow sequel was very near the top of that list for both parties. Emily Blunt has also repeatedly, publicly confirmed her interest, right? People will ask her about this from time to time. And every time they do, she says, yes, I am on board. I would love to make a sequel. As soon as Tom's schedule opens up, we will do it. So
it really is such a great role. There's so much there because not only does she have this like the super soldier thing, which is the most boring part. But she also delivers on that.
Right.
But this, like, it's not even a patriotism, but it's a humanism that she has. That,
Absolutely.
like, she hates war,
Yeah.
but she knows that this war is the only way through. And so she's 100% behind it, live or die.
Yeah.
And yeah, that thing I was talking about before, where she is like romantically interested in this man, but refuses to be because she's already basically seen this other guy die 300 times and can't do that again.
The
and
way
so
that we
happening.
unfold her backstory and the way that Blunt just delivers
Beautiful.
it is so fantastic. You completely buy that she has had this experience, that she lived hundreds of days and won the Battle of Verdun. Like, it's incredible. Like, yes, she is so far and away the best thing about this film,
Completely
both
agree.
in terms
and
of
the
the
most
performance
interesting character
and in terms of the writing. It's
Yeah.
extraordinary. Village Roadshow, interestingly, also has been talking about a TV series adaptation for Warner. They discussed that at the end of 2022. Yeah, like, it's hard to see.
We were just talking about this with Russian Doll. Like, you can't sustain it that long. It's not a good idea.
Necessarily a limited idea, and you just can't go back to the well. But I mean, if you're going to come in and tell me that you want to do 10 episodes and that's it, 10 episodes and out,
okay, yeah,
I'd still think it would probably be better being a movie at that point. But yeah. With all that said, then let's get into our discussion, and we get to open this movie with one of our favorite things of late, which is someone messing with the Warner Brothers logo.
Oh yeah, we've been talking about this recently.
Just a little bit, a great deal of restraint this time.
Restraint, yes, it's true.
How do you feel about intercutting the studio logos with this news reporting?
Cool.
It's really good and effective, right?
I like it. And I was thinking, because of course they just did this in Twisters too, I like it in the theater. I like that kind of like on-ramp into the movie.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Twisters that we don't really do in this film, and it's harder to kind of communicate at home on your TV anyway, is like different video quality. I love in Twisters, we have like the look of the film at large, and then we have the look when people are shooting on little handheld digital video cameras like GoPros and the like, and then we have the look of actual news footage and how all of those things look subtly different. I think that's
very cool.
Really, really interesting. And we do some of that here at the beginning.
Yeah, especially with the news programs.
Yeah. So a meteorite crashes into Germany, an alien invasion begins, all of Europe is lost. What do you think of the decision to set this between London and the beaches of Normandy in what is very much an allegorical reinterpretation of World War II, right?
Yes. I think that I do like it because it kind of keeps the movie from being too sci-fi. If this was on another planet, I wouldn't probably care as much.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it roots me a little bit. And I like that time when Cage skips a day and decides not to go to work that day, as it were, and goes to a pub to drink instead. And hears guys talking about like their parents or grandparents, whatever it was, storming Normandy.
Yeah, fighting in the war.
Yeah. And I think it makes the whole thing feel a little more human and a little more, gosh, it's that gulf between possible and impossible. Like, it makes the odds feel even bigger, and it makes the just the weight and the gravity of what is happening seem even bigger.
Yeah, I think narratively it allows us to shortcut any opposition that we would have to the idea that all of these different governments have kind of come together to present this unified defense. We have this one line from Brendan Gleeson where he's talking to Cage's commanding officer in the United States military.
Right.
And about Cage just being suborned to whatever this United Defense Force is.
Yeah.
The only historical precedent that we have for that really are the Allies in World War II. And in actuality, it super did not work like that. But like we have that as like a cultural imprint of rising to defeat a common foe. So I see why we're doing that. I'm a little uncomfortable about the use of the beaches of Normandy and of Verdun too. Like, I'm a little uncomfortable about the way that we're evoking these places that have seen real and incalculable tragedy being kind of co-opted for what is ultimately a pretty silly sci-fi premise. I think this movie works because it is kind of silly.
That's interesting. Yes. I also think, though, it helps the movie get away from what otherwise would be a lot of like hoorah American militarism.
That's a really strong
And we
point.
get away from that, which is great.
There's almost a complete absence of it, despite individual characters very much embodying that hoorah spirit, right? We get no real Independence Day moment.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, too, we keep bringing this back to Twisters. I'm sorry, that's so silly. But I was just reading an article about how, like, Twisters had this magnificent opening weekend, of course, but a ton of it was in Tornado Alley. Like
Yeah.
where people actually experience these things is where people went to see the movie. And you could see why that could potentially not be the case. And in fact, if you watch the movie, it's not for people who live here at all in a lot of ways. But I saw that the Moore Warren had the strongest
which is
showing.
a movie theater that it's just, I don't know, 10 miles north of us.
Yeah, we pass it all the time.
That has been destroyed completely. That entire part of town
completely flattened
has
to
been completely
nothing.
razed by 2 separate F5 tornado events over the last, 25 years?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the fact that they rebuilt that entire town
Mm-hmm.
and rebuilt this giant movie theater right in the heart of that town, it's by far the closest IMAX theater to us.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the showing there, it has been out the door. You could not get tickets. I
Yes.
even went looking the other night before we went to go and see Twisters opening weekend. I went to see, hey, can we get tickets there? And they were sold out completely. So it's nice to see that response. And there is something, you're right, about local and regional specificity, I suppose, kind of informing. It can also counteract, right? Some of my least favorite moments in Twisters are the moments where they're explaining Oklahoma in a way that is not really very applicable, or explaining things that Oklahoma people already know.
Yes,
to Oklahoma
that's what I mean to say when it's like
absolutely.
It's not for Oklahomans in a way. Yes, exactly.
But I do love, you're right, how we wield this international effort in Edge of Tomorrow, and how focused it is. Right, we're back to this idea that in a time loop story, you have to limit your number of settings because you're going to be there again and again and again. So functionally, we use Whitehall and Heathrow, the forward operating base at Heathrow, and the beach at Normandy, and that's like it, right? Until we get to the set piece at the end of the film. That's basically
in Paris, and the Louvre, and all things.
Sure.
Yes, why not?
Because the aliens hate the IMP pyramid at the Louvre so much that they want to guarantee that if anyone's going to destroy the Omega, then at least they're also going to take out that damn pyramid. I think that's the role here. We're also, of course, folding at this point all of this reportage, all of this, the narrative of this alien invasion with these signs and symbols of rebellion, of resistance, of a refusal to, give up and surrender. All of this iconography. We meet Vertasky first as an icon, right? Which is such a great narrative
that is really
pull
cool.
here.
Yeah.
I love that we don't get her for the first half an hour of this film, really. We get to see her as we're loading onto the dropships for the first mission out, but that's it. We don't get to meet her for a long, long time because she's an icon of victory.
Yeah, she's Captain America. Yeah, totally.
I love that.
It's cool.
What do you think of co-opting her casual title in the original light novel as a name here that we oftentimes cut when people are about to use it? She is the Full Metal Bitch. But we oftentimes will have people talking over it as that name is said.
Yes.
Do you like that or not so much like that?
I'm kind of indifferent to that one, I guess. Yeah. It doesn't offend me, but...
Do you prefer the Angel of Verdun? Do you like
Angel of Verdun's way cooler.
So much more romantic.
Yeah, I don't know why, but way cooler, yes.
The other thing that I really want to call out here is how good Cruise is in this mode when he is appearing first on the news programs, where he's appearing first as a part of this propagandistic effort.
Yes.
How absolutely naturally he fits that modality.
Yeah,
I find it to be really interesting because I can't believe we're so deep into the podcast and we haven't even talked about literally my favorite thing about this film is that this is Cruise back in his cocktail Rain Man. I'm 40% con man at this point. I love this version of Tom Cruise, and I'm so glad that he did it one more time. I don't know we're ever going to see it again.
Yeah, I hope so.
I love this version of Cruise.
Yeah,
he works for you here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny too, because I can see how much Cruise I've been watching lately. Because when they first cut to him, in the helicopter with the hat down over his face, you just see his nose. I'm like, that's him. There he is. I know that nose.
he's so physically identifiable is the thing. The other thing that I love about the beginning of this film is that we are actually shooting Tom Cruise at his height. We are emphasizing how small he is.
Yep.
Halfway through this film, I don't know if you noticed, but we stopped doing that.
That
halfway
tracks.
through this film,
I didn't notice, but that makes sense.
Lowering the camera and angling it up just a little bit. We're making him just a little bit more statuesque.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But here we are playing every inch of his 5'4" height.
Yeah,
it really, really works. We begin, of course, with this fairly obligatory scene where we kind of motivate the action somewhat artificially.
Yeah, there's a lot of exposition going on in the first part of this movie,
there's
sure.
A fair amount. I don't think that it overwhelms the pace of the film. It is a mechanism, right? As soon as we open on this scene with Gleeson, I think
Mhm.
I'm aware of the artifice of the setup here.
Yeah.
That it's
And just to help me,
yes,
the whole super soldier of it is really just the exoskeleton suits, right? The
yes,
exosuits.
yes.
That's what I thought. Just
That's
making
right.
sure. Okay. I was
Yeah,
ready
we're
for
not
that to be
actually
more than that.
well,
And they
that's the
never
thing, right?
kind of
You could believe it
exactly
because Emily Blunt is
yeah.
giving this like impossible coming up
Totally.
into her yoga position,
Over and over again. Yes,
looking
please.
like Wonder
Yeah.
Woman. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's absolutely
Mhm.
astonishing. But yes, but that's the role that she is playing iconographically
Yeah.
for the unified troops is that she is the symbol of be all that you can be, I
Mhm,
guess.
mhm.
So we open in this scene with Gleeson where he tells Cage that he is going to the front line in order to report from the front line in order to manage the public response, in
Right.
order to kind of mediate what always happens when there is a military engagement, where you get armchair quarterbacks reinterpreting military
Mhm.
strategy, kind of poring over any and all losses
Yeah,
that
yeah.
occur. And he wants this to be managed, which is Cruz's job. This is where we learned that Cruz was previously an ad exec, that
Yeah,
he had an
makes so much
advertising firm
sense.
that he
Yes,
lost,
yes.
and then he managed to kind of parlay that experience into a military position. He's a major. Like
Yeah.
that gives him a lot of seniority, a lot of the comforts of rank and privilege, but also no danger whatsoever.
Mhm.
So we come into this film seeing what a hustler this guy is.
Yeah.
And I
And not
love
hiding
it.
that in any way. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And then
Mhm.
turning around and trying to threaten. It's so weird. Gleeson says, "Are you trying to blackmail me?" To which the response should be, "No, this is not what blackmail is.
Yeah, that's not what blackmail
Here
is.
is a dictionary.
Yeah.
I am threatening
I am threatening you. Yes.
But it's technically, no, sir, I am not
yeah.
blackmailing you."
That would have gone over real well.
Cruz is arrested. He is
Mhm.
busted down to private. He is shipped out to the forward operating base,
Yeah.
where he is placed into the gentle, loving care of Bill Paxton's mustache. Give it to me.
Sergeant Farrell, is that right?
Farrell, yes.
Yes.
Lay down to me what is bad for you about this objectively perfect performance.
It is the accent. I hate that stupid. This whole
It's
movie
so
is
much.
full of stupid accents for
Yep.
no reason, and I don't understand why. Everybody needed to take it down like 3 notches.
I kind of love that we didn't, though. I think in particular, Nance, Charlotte
Terrible.
Riley.
Hated it.
Yes, who is an English actress.
It
who
and
is-
it sounded like it.
Yes.
Yes. Stupid. No, thank you.
You know who's great is Kik Gurry, who plays Griff, the Australian guy.
Uh-huh.
I think that guy is wonderful.
I
I-
don't remember enough about him except that he's the one
He's
who tries to beat him up a couple of times.
Always
Yeah.
flamboyantly dressed. No. He's the
Oh, he's the other
flamboyantly
one. Yeah,
dressed
yeah,
guy
yeah.
who's always like
Helping
loading
him
him
into
into.
the- yeah. Got it.
I think
Mhm.
there's something very engaging.
Agreed.
About that
I like
actor
him.
that I
Yes.
like a great deal.
Yeah, engaging.
So
Absolutely.
Paxton is obviously leveraging, like a kind of, there's a reason he's from Kentucky, you guys. He's giving like Confederate general. He's giving
Sure.
like that kind of drill sergeant,
Mhm.
Arlie Ermy kind of
Yes, yes.
role here. But it's done with sufficient levity. What I love about the take on this character is having him come in with an excess of philosophy and kindness is so good. Like really amping
Excessive
up that,
kindness, you think?
making him so genial, making him like he's not yelling, he's not screaming, he's not threatening. He is like engaged in a discourse. He's like pedagogically
Okay.
leading these young men and women to a better tomorrow. Like when he is rhapsodizing about war being like the great equalizer and like the
Mhm.
crucible of opportunity, I believe that guy thinks that, and he
Oh, of
is
course.
wrong and foolish for
Yeah.
thinking that. But I do believe that he believes it.
Yeah. Okay,
And
fair enough.
It's a take on this tired drill sergeant kind of trope
It's true.
that I've never seen
yeah,
before,
he's
and
not
I'm
yelling
so
and spitting in
grateful
anybody's
for it.
face. That's
Yeah,
true.
or hurling, slurs and invective.
Yeah, true.
And I'm so grateful for, just the fact that it's not what you expect. Just the fact that it
Yeah.
is more complicated and interesting. And you're giving Paxton an opportunity to really chew this dialogue. Like he really gets
Yes,
to
he does.
orate. This is not me being in any way ironic. I want to emphasize that. Genuinely love it.
I know.
It's very silly. But I think that when this film works at its best, it is kind of silly.
It is silly. Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think that, as long as we stay in that tonal range, it's for me what kind of drops away in the last act of the film is a lot of that lightness of tone, that lightness of touch. And I think it works better when we're still infusing that into the script, the Christopher McQuarrie of it all, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
I also want to comment on one final thing before we leave Brendan Gleeson alone for like a good half of this film. I do want to comment that when he orders the military policeman to arrest Cage, we get the least typical Tom Cruise run that we've ever seen. Running down the hallway, flailing his arms.
Flapping. Yeah. It's
so
great.
good.
It's really smart.
And it's so exhilarating because in that moment, you know that everything he does when he runs normally is intentional.
Yeah.
And that he's kind of setting aside that movie star persona. Love Cruise in this film. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, at least for 2/3 of this film. Love him on the back foot, trying to scrabble. That like desperation flop sweat that he gets when he's really trying to get out of it is so compelling. I still think that's his superpower as an actor. So we're out at the Heathrow operating base. Cage is trying to charm Farrell, but doesn't really succeed. We're introduced to J Squad for the first of, 7 times.
Yeah.
Just this motley band of people who kind of suck at being soldiers, which is great. We're introduced to the exosuits. We're introduced to Ratasky herself. We fly out over the white cliffs of Dover. We're doing this pretty quickly. Paxton gets one more inspiring speech on the deck of the dropship there. Then they're attacked. They drop onto the beaches of Normandy. The dropships are exploding. People are dying. Cage takes cover in a crater to avoid the first exploding ship, which is like a really nice foreshadowing of how he is going to continue to survive by like learning and internalizing these patterns by playing the video game and knowing where every secret is going to be hidden. That I think works really, really well. Then he witnesses the death of Ratasky. J Squad reflects on the disastrous
invasion. Which is almost
invasion.
his fault because she's looking at him. I think that's really smart.
Yes. I watched that scene a few times over, trying to interpret what is happening on Emily Blunt's face. Trying to interpret. Is she somehow reading him, even at that distance, as someone who possesses this Groundhog Day time loop power?
But he didn't have it that time, right? That was the very first time, was it not?
But this is what I'm wondering. Is she already seeing something? I don't know. There's just a little fuzziness around the edge of this film about, because the Omega is rewinding time and because these days are being lived over and over again, there's a little bit of fuzziness about what memories are actually carried forward and like what connects these people across time and space. And I'm just curious about it. I'm just interested in it. And otherwise, I find that moment to be very ambiguous.
Yes.
And I'm kind of leaning into the idea that it is provocative rather than kind of hollow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, sure.
I'm kind of, I want to be doing the
yeah,
Lynchian interpretation here,
yes.
to do that interpretive maneuver. And I'm not sure that there's anything there, but I do find it interesting at least. We get the reflection on this disastrous invasion. The mimics knew that they were coming and everything is going to hell. Farrell takes command. The mimics are closing in. They emerge from the ground in a bloody whirl. Actually, no, they emerge from the ground in a bloodless whirlwind.
Yes.
Because this is a PG-13 film. Which I think is one of the reasons that the mimics look so completely not only inhuman, but kind of inorganic, right? They don't look like they are living beings.
We can blow them to shreds.
We can blow them to bits.
Yeah.
And the deaths that we see of the human characters are mostly completely bloodless.
Yeah, somebody gets squashed, somebody disappears under a thing,
which kind of leans into, when Cruise's...
Although I found Cruise's first death harrowing.
It is.
Yeah.
I think you really have to sell that, though. And they really do lean into it. When Cruise is talking about this in promotional material around the time, he's talking about the Wile E. Coyote deaths that are happening, and that these things should be heightened, should be exaggerated, because if they're not, this is the grimmest film you've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
It does make me think that on the poll for the bonus episode this month, we really should put Verhoeven's Starship Troopers. Have you seen Starship Troopers?
I've never seen it, but I would be down to watch it.
There's a lot of commonality. Funnily enough, the exosuits in this film are very similar to the exosuits that come from the novel Starship Troopers, which is the original text. Verhoeven drops those out of the film because he thinks they're not interesting to look at, which you can kind of see what they're doing. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap. If this movie was leaning on like the fascist satire, then, because that's what you get from Verhoeven. If this movie were leaning on fascist satire, it would be very similar to Starship Troopers. Yeah.
Okay.
Cage barely kills one of the mimics and is then approached by the larger alien, the Alpha, which he destroys using the Claymore. He dies, is grossly and very viscerally covered in its, essential juices. And
I didn't understand how he died.
He dies in the explosion, I think.
That's what I thought. The explosion kills him as well.
Yes, but he is feeling in that moment the blood of the Alpha pouring into him. And it's soft. It really is. But he is ostensibly, literally carrying the blood of this alpha mimic inside his body, loop after loop after loop after loop. And that is literally and physically what is giving him his ability to reset the day. I don't know how I feel about that.
You just have to go with it. You just got to roll with it.
You really do.
Yeah.
I'm
and
not sure.
Honestly, I don't mind that kind of thing. Like,
yeah, they do at least move past it quickly.
Right.
And it feels internally consistent, even if it's a little hard to get a hold on, really. For
Yes.
me, at least, I want to think a little more about the mechanics of it and about how it works.
Yeah. If the movie tried to be smarter, I wouldn't like it nearly as much. But I think because, I mean it.
No, I think you're entirely right.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredibly astute
I will
perspective
play this
on this
video
film.
game with you,
Yes.
sure, but let's
Yeah,
not
completely.
pretend. Yeah.
So he wakes up all at once back at Heathrow. We are 25 minutes into the film. All of that initial exposition, all the way from the news reporting through Brendan Gleeson's office to our first run through Heathrow, all of that happens in the first 25 minutes. The second loop, which we're about to experience, takes 5 minutes start to finish, which is incredibly efficient. It's really, really beautifully done because you don't feel as though you're eliding time. You don't feel as though you're losing anything. We're seeing every single thing that we saw the first time around, but it is just a line here, a cut here, a shot here. We're giving this like sense impression
for that.
of it in a very, very masterful way. Again, cannot commend the editing on this film enough.
Agreed.
I should look at the editing category at the Academy Awards this year because
this should be on
I'm
there.
surprised that it's not. Yeah.
But the Oscars don't like this kind of film at all.
They don't. And they also don't like films that don't have good buzz. They don't like films that don't have good word of mouth.
That's true.
Particularly that kind
Unless they have almost no word of mouth.
Exactly.
And they can tell
that's
you, here's a sleeper. You missed
kind
it.
of
Go back.
into itself. Yeah. This second one gives us one of my favorite moments in the entire film. This is, by the time that we return to the beach, he saves Ratasky, who then takes his battery pack and leaves him to die.
Yes.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just a great mode. Yeah. We then crash into our third repetition, waking up again at Heathrow, and he immediately begins to do the thing that he does, which is use his knowledge and charm to get himself out of this position. He tries charming them. He tries telling them about the future. He tries telling them the few things that he knows about them. And we cut to the dropship and him with duct tape over his mouth.
Yep.
It's kind of good. You always get that moment in a time loop story where you're like, well, can't you just like say the right thing? Can't you just continue to experiment to say the right thing? And I do like that this film very assertively demarcates that as an impossible strategy until we get to Gleeson, which is kind of the moment that the film stops working as well for me, I have to say.
Yeah.
Although that, of course, turning out to be a trap just kind of makes it fall apart in a different way. I don't know. We'll get to all of that. The other great thing that happens here in our third repetition, because he's being so desperate, he's trying to get out of it, he's got the duct tape on his mouth, but when the dropship triggers, he comes down to the beach and lands in a combat stance instead of face planting into the sand.
Yes.
Excellent visual storytelling, because that is the heart of the entire film. You do it over and over and you get better at it.
Yes.
It's so good.
Agreed.
And then we start cutting faster and faster because he learns how to save Kimmel from the collapsing dropship. He gets to Ratasky. He saves her. He saves her, we learn at this point, which is so great. Not because she's the angel of Verdun or anything else, but because he believes she can get them off of the beach.
Exactly.
She can save him. And that's really strong. That's lovely. And then we get this fantastic moment after another 5 minutes, right? So we do 25 minutes for the first setup, 5 minutes for the second setup. Now we've done, 10 more.
Yeah.
And we close out that 5 minute chunk of the film with her telling him to find her when he wakes up, which is such a great curveball.
It is great. Yeah. That was a really cool moment.
Yeah. A couple times in this film where the structure really sings, and that is one of them, doing something this unexpected. And what's wonderful now is that we're going to spend 20 minutes of the film not back on the beach. We're not just going to keep running this cycle again. We're going to switch to a new cycle, a new track at a different part of the timeline. And that's, really, really rich and interesting.
What do you think of this training gym that she's in, that she is training him in with the...
It's extremely stupid, and I love it with every fiber of my being.
I completely agree. It is stupid and dumb, and the fact that he physically dies in it like 4 times, well, maybe not dies exactly, but is completely incapacitated and wounded.
Breaks his back, breaks his legs, so she executes him over and over and over again. Yeah, no, I'm big into...
Completely insane.
I love any kind of, because I grew up reading X-Men comics. And the X-Men have the Danger Room. So
Danger Room? I did not know this.
Oh, yeah. The Danger Room is the gymnasium in the X-Mansion where they train. And it originally starts out as here's an actual flamethrower that's going to fire gouts of flame at you, young X-Man.
Oh,
and then
God.
By they retrofit it with Shi'ar technology, I believe, so that it can become like the holodeck, right? You can just make anything in there.
Oh, my God.
Anytime,
Hunger Games has something a little bit like that, too.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Anytime we do like a Danger Room sequence, I am 100% in. I always love them.
Okay.
Yeah. And as far as danger rooms go, this one's pretty terrible.
Oh,
But
terrible.
The
Yeah.
the whirling mechanical blades
Yeah.
are, they feel physical in a way that's
They do.
very threatening.
It's very neat. Yeah.
And
Yeah. They seem to
God,
be a practical effect most of the time, too.
I would doubt that, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Again,
they're
if not,
easy to
it's
CG.
just really
Yeah.
well done.
I think that might be where we are. Yeah. This whole thing, I think, is wonderful. Now that he's back, he's having fun. He's charming J Squad. He's like shortcutting the cycle that we've seen already, kind of, just telling Farrell what he wants to hear so that he can get on with his day. We do the great thing where he insults Farrell and is told to drop and do 50 push-ups, rolls under the truck to escape, and the first time screws it up.
Yep.
And we just get Bill Paxton giving the reaction shot, which is brilliant.
It's funny. Yeah.
I'm generally a little skeptical about times when we break our established POV. Like, for this film to work, we absolutely have to be in Cage's POV the whole damn time, because he is the only one that has a consistent impression of this universe.
Yes.
Right? That's the only way that we can track this story. This film will break that POV from time to time for a joke.
Yeah.
And I'm basically always glad when it does, even though it's narratively, narratively kind of shaky craft.
Yeah.
But it's worth the joke every single time. And yeah, Paxton making a face when he rolls into the truck. Very, very strong. And then we really do get the introduction to Emily Blunt being just brilliant and baller the whole time. And that's followed by the introduction to Noah Taylor, who, of course, you recognize as tech support from Vanilla Sky.
Yes, that's
as
right.
Dr.
I like him
Carter.
very much here.
We get all of this exposition, which is great. We even foreshadow the use of the transponder, which will be so important in the third act, because he picks it up here and she says, use this, and he says it doesn't work. And it's just, as it pops out the little blades, it's a great little comic moment that would work on its own, but also kind of foreshadows what's coming next. Really strong. How does Noah Taylor work for you?
I love him. I think he's really great. I liked him as tech support in Vanilla Sky too. I just think he's cool and compelling.
Yeah.
He's got those wild eyes. And as like a almost mad scientist, perfect casting.
This is, I think, a really great scene that is really hard to do. Because this is all of the real exposition that we're going to get. There isn't a mega. All of the mimics are kind of like a hive mind. Like the alphas are like significant communication nodes in that network. The Omega controls them all. The Omega can travel in time. By the way, that's the thing we should probably address.
One of my favorite Tom Cruise moments too, where he's like, "This was a terrific presentation."
I wrote down
terrific
one line of dialogue from this film, and that was it.
Same.
Because it is perfect.
It is. I completely agree.
The length of the beat, the way that he deflates the tension in the room, the way that he is, it's a Jerry Maguire charm line.
It is 100% Jerry Maguire.
Good.
Yeah,
I
love
absolutely perfect. So the Omega is aware that Cage is time looping and will eventually kill him. So we have this operative time lock, which I really like. This idea that he is going to start seeing visions. The Omega will be getting closer to him. He can die and come back, but not an infinite number of times.
Right.
Every life is still valuable. That's just smart screenwriting.
Yes.
That's just really good to have that operating here.
But also that's on time and not on how many lives.
Yeah.
So her just executing him from day to day.
It's still also the practical thing to do. I love it. It's so great. Giving Ratajski that hard edge is just so important to this film.
Agreed.
Working. So we're looping and we're training hard. We kind of get this extended montage of life after life. We keep tightening the rhythm tighter and tighter and tighter, which is so great, until he sees the Omega in a vision. Then we go back to Carter and the holographic table. 51 minutes in, we're back on the beach. We just spent 20 minutes away from the beach, and the whole thing works. And then all at once, we're back again, intercutting with these planning scenes that he gets with Ratajski, where he's telling her, right, okay, so we're going to climb 30 steps forward, then you turn to your left, then you duck to your right, and we're planning it out like we're taking out all of the Goombas
like
on 1-1.
Yeah.
I love, as someone who really did begin playing video games when video games were like this, when they were just arcade games and everything was predictable and systemic in that way. You always know where that first Goomba is coming, and he will always move in exactly the same way on Mario 1-1. So you can always take him out. And it's just, it's in my blood now. I can play 1-1 probably blindfolded.
Yes.
Because I've just internalized it so much.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting perspective on, the discussions that we have around video games and whether they're worth anything and whether this is just memorization by rote. And later what we get, this development of actual skill from Cruise, from Cage. I really like how we do that. This is also where Cage kind of gets dispirited. He's weighed down by how difficult this is, because he keeps seeing Ratajski dying out there on the beach. This is where he steals the motorcycle. He goes to the pub in London. We have these discussions. We get the mimics coming up the Thames is that is such a simple shot. That is such a simple effect.
Yeah.
And it is really upsetting.
And it's really smart storytelling, too. This idea that he needs like a mental health break day off.
Yeah.
But to take it really does just give him that extra, no, if I don't do this, the world ends. Like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And not only does the world end, but I end anyway. You know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know. There's something really lovely
And it's
about it.
great, too, because we go back and we do the formality. We see a couple of fragments of a couple more loops, and then they're off the beach. We understand that they did it. They
Yep.
fought this far, and we get to see
Mhm.
the caravan park, the RV park
Yeah.
here on the other side of the dunes, which is really good. And we get this this first try sequence, I guess, where they take the one of the two cars that they haven't yet tried. They manage to get out of town, and that works beautifully. This
Yeah.
carries us basically, we get the action sequence shooting the mimic that's been hiding in the little caravan the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't really understand their battle plan, the mimics.
Nope.
I mean, it's
There's
just
a lot
kinda
that doesn't make sense.
hide and wait
Yeah.
for things. Is it that it's
They're
supposed
almost
to
like
be,
landmines.
yeah, but there's something, because it's maybe the distributed intelligence that the individual soldiers don't matter. So you literally just seed the entire world with these things. Eventually the world will be full of them. It's
Yeah.
hard to kind of make that argument, I suppose.
Mhm.
We wind up eventually out at this absolutely gorgeous, like sunset dappled, but also kind of misty moored kind of French farmhouse with
So
a
cool.
helicopter in the
Love
yard,
it.
because of course there is.
Yeah.
And he overplays his hand, revealing that they have been here many times before.
Mhm. One of my very favorite sequences. This was really, really good and
Yeah.
really upsetting. And she's so great when he's like, we can just refill the car. It's got a lot of fuel in it. And she says, we're taking the helicopter.
Yeah.
And then it's just a few moments after that it clicks for her. And she says, how many times have we been here?
Yeah.
Where are the keys? Ah.
Because
really
he
good.
knows how she takes her coffee. We're kind
Yeah,
of foreshadowing all of this with the
exactly.
discussion of like, what is her middle name? And
Yeah.
And I think too that Cruz does this really lovely pivot here, because he's come through this training and he does
Mhm.
understand how important things are. And he saw the mimics coming up the Thames and like
Yeah.
striking at the civil heart of
Right.
London here. I buy that he is turning into more of a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. And I also buy at the same time that he's kind of falling for her.
Right.
And that it's not necessarily about, I don't know, it's not necessarily about winning. It is about preserving her for what comes next.
Yeah. Now he has to save her and save the
Yeah,
world. But it doesn't
exactly.
count if he saves the world without her. I like
And he
that.
can't take the risk of killing the Omega after she's already died,
Mhm.
because then she's just gone
Then
from the
she's
world.
just dead forever.
And
yeah.
it's tangled and it's emotional and
like
it's
it.
interesting, particularly
Yeah.
for a guy who comes in, very involved in his own like personal stake.
Absolutely. Almost a narcissist. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it. The firefight that we get here at the farmhouse to kind of conclude this, before she tells him in a beat that does not come back, right? He never needs to know that her middle name is Rose. That never comes back?
No, I don't think that ever comes back. But it was yeah, but there was something to it. I liked that when he said, I know your middle name's Peyton. She's like, my middle name's not Peyton. I probably told you that to shut you up. And you think that's probably exactly what happened, actually.
Love those beats. That entire
Yeah.
conversation. So good, so strong. When he's
Uh-huh.
just making up these things that she's told him. Or maybe he's not making them up and maybe
Yeah.
she's playing it off right now. It's so complex and
It
crunchy.
is.
Yeah.
It's
But it
lovely.
is just weird that we really lean in on her telling him her middle name. And
Yeah.
that it never comes back. He never has to convince her of anything using her middle name. It's a strange thing. But
Yeah.
this is also kind of the point at which we abandon the idea that she is also resetting every day. They are just now functionally, like emotionally, a couple.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
And-
again is not true and therefore doesn't work. But yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the big problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I do like here very much is the emotional weight that this has for Cage, because it's after she tells him her middle name that we reset once more. He gets drunk and goes by himself. He doesn't recruit her
Yes.
this time.
Yes.
He's not even saving people on the beach.
Mhm.
He's out. He's not trying to fix everything. He's just trying to kill the monster.
Yeah.
Gets the helicopter, gets to the dam. We get this firefight, and the Omega is not there.
Yep.
And it's really good. I think it's quite effective. This is the end of the second act, basically, when we reset once more. He goes back to Carter, and Carter kind of outlines, it was a vision that was implanted. It's all a trap. It's all a trick. The Omega can travel over and over. It can time loop whenever it wants. So we need a different plan. This is when we introduce the transponder. This is when we have to go back to Brendan Gleeson.
Right.
I like this scene. I love, actually, the comedic scene of the two of them infiltrating Whitehall.
Yes.
Where he's really doing the thing, where he has obviously practiced this hundreds of times in order to make it work. And
Yes.
it's also practical. And some of it is so silly. The moment in the hallway where he just spins her 360 and the timing is perfect and then they just move on. I really liked it. Does that work for you? It's a very funny, silly moment.
No, I need those funny, silly moments because you're right. It is otherwise incredibly grim and bleak.
Yeah.
So I thought it was all good and funny. Yeah,
It's
I liked it.
It is
and
also...
I liked him in the office too. Tell him this.
I like
this
that
is
very
the
much.
phone call. Tell them that. Tell your secretary everything's okay. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, no. The moment where they are infiltrating Whitehall, as silly as it is...
Don't shoot me again.
That feels the most to me like a Mission Impossible film. That feels like, you know, when Ethan Hunt is like pushed to the edge of his ability and he's being improvisational and he's just kind of fighting his way through it moment by moment, second by second. That all feels very organic through there. And yeah, it's a real shame in a way that Emily Blunt is in this film and couldn't come back and do a Mission Impossible movie instead. Though we're going to get Rebecca Ferguson next week.
So exciting.
Who's kind of doing the same thing. It's
really
exciting.
similar, actually. Yeah, that's true.
It's a really interesting thing about Cruise's career at this point, that he has stopped being afraid, quote unquote. He has stopped being, I don't know, threatened by female co-stars. And he is deliberately writing himself into positions where he is subordinated to a more powerful woman.
Yeah.
And I think that is the best thing that he does in his career. And we're going to see it a lot over the next few films.
It's never better. At least I've never seen it better than in this, particularly in that farmhouse sequence where it's just, he is trying to like quietly, carefully have the upper hand, but it's so clear who is the one in charge who makes the calls. And he knows it too. And it's not gendered. It's just, you are like in every way the alpha. Like she is just in every way.
Moral authority and he does not. And it's a thing that I love when Tom Cruise as an actor does not have the moral authority in the scene.
Yeah.
That is almost, you know, when we talk about him being on the back foot, we talk about him scrabbling, we talk about him being sweaty. That is what it is. When he is not righteous in a scene, he is almost always better than when he is righteous in a scene. Unfortunately, Tom Cruise movies generally orient themselves around his righteousness.
Sure.
They generally orient themselves around, you are the ultimate moral authority here. And it's great to see him. Yeah, just under the thumb of someone who is much more capable and who carries agency in a narrative sense. So in an unconvincing way, Brendan Gleeson gives them the transponder that they need, only for them to be ambushed outside by military police. I love that we reset immediately and do this again with them trying to escape in the car, which is really good. She jams the transponder into his leg and we get the vision of the Omega under the Louvre. What do you feel about the use of the Louvre? I know we were joking about it earlier, but it is kind of stupid, right? Like, why there of all places? What is the internal like justification for this, except that it is the most recognizable landmark in Paris, right?
That's true. Can you imagine if the Omega was just under a field, like some anonymous field?
You would never find it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why we need it, I guess, as narrative. But
because even, the Ayampe pyramid is like geometrically recognizable in a way that nothing else in Paris is. It's just, it's the most striking thing, other than, I guess, the Eiffel Tower itself.
Yeah, Eiffel Tower for sure. But yes.
That would be, but we want to avoid that because that was blown up by aliens in 1996 during Independence Day, as the world knows. So this could be happening in the same universe. We don't know for sure.
You never know.
And this is where the movie pulls one of, I think, its most interesting and certainly courageous narrative turns, because this is where he bleeds out in the car and wakes up in the hospital having lost his powers. We have set aside the entire premise of the film now, and we're not going to cheat. We're not going to reset. We're not going to in any way undo this transformation.
Yeah.
We're just setting the stage for a very real third act conflict. I think this is dramatic and works beautifully and is, I think, a great way of shortcutting the time loop, right? Set the scale, set the tone, set the scope and the severity, the intensity of the conflict, and then remove the time loop from that so you have to do it on your own without training wheels. That's a really interesting device. Yeah,
I agree.
Absolutely love Ratansky freeing him from the hospital bed.
Yes, it took me 3 minutes.
What are you doing? And again, that's a moment where we see from her a huge amount of affection.
Yeah.
For a man that she does not know. For a man that she met, hours, like a few hours ago.
Yeah.
This is where we learn that we now have 3 hours before the attack on the Normandy beach. They have 3 hours to kill the Omega. He goes back and recruits J Squad in a very charming scene.
A charming scene. I agree. Yeah.
Like it, We steal a dropship, I guess.
Sure.
And head across the channel all the way to Paris. They come under attack. And there's some ambiguity here about whether the Omega really does know that they are coming, or, is unaware. And
I don't know.
maybe there are just a lot of mimics. Something that we haven't mentioned thus far. Really love the ballistic effects that we get from the mimics. Whatever their shots are that they fire, that they have this curving path behind them and they kind of arc like they're mortar fire. Just a really good and inventive effect there.
Yeah,
I like the way that they look. But they come under attack nonetheless. Some of them drop out as the dropship crashes, and Cage is thrust into the famously hygienic and swimmable waters of the Seine.
Of the Seine, sure.
Did you see this? This broke yesterday.
Oh, that the mayor of Paris swam in the Seine to show that it was safe.
Yes.
I did see this.
After 8 years and $1.5 billion of effort, for the first time in a century, the waters of the Seine in the heart of Paris are clean enough that you can swim safely in them.
Wow.
They did that for the Olympics. Imagine what we could do if we really wanted to.
If we just really, wow.
Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that broke yesterday as of this recording.
Wow.
So.
I saw in a similar vein this morning a picture of a paraplegic in an exosuit walking and carrying the Olympic torch. And that exosuit looked a lot like these.
Sure.
Not so clunky and clumsy, but even like the mode of walking and the physicality of it. You can tell that somebody was doing research.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We're still, I think, a moment of optimism here, still capable of great things.
We're still capable of great things. I saw the other day something about how from first flight to Man on the Moon was 66 years.
Yep.
That's insane.
Sure.
Anyway.
And from Man on the Moon to here
I know.
has been as long.
Yeah, look, all right.
But also, no one during, the Apollo program could have predicted the internet, right?
That's true.
Or the ubiquity of the supercomputers that we carry in our pockets. We have advanced in other ways.
In other
sure.
ways, yeah.
Maybe there's just a little optimism in the water.
A little hope.
Even if it's only in the Seine,
Seine.
in the heart of Paris. This is our final set piece sequence. Really, we have the soldiers of J Squad kind of sacrificing themselves one at a time. We finally fire up the engines on the dropship and shatter our way into the underground parking garage, which I guess is what in real life is beneath the Louvre, which is
makes sense.
kind of cool.
Sure.
And then under that is, a big pond full of alien, full of Omega.
Sure.
We have the detonation of the grenades, and
cool.
That's it. Basically, the movie is kind of perfunctory in its final movement because it is just an action sequence and we can't do anything that smart with it because we don't have any tricks left up our sleeves.
Yeah.
And kind of, I suppose that is the intention, right?
Yeah.
After a movie that has been so tricksy, we just play this straight, and maybe that's supposed to give us some catharsis, but I found myself getting a little bored just with this action sequence right here at the end.
I like this.
And kind of losing interest in the tonality of it all, I suppose, because we're much less leavened with comedy, with wit, with that lighter tone.
Yeah, that is true. That's fair. Yeah.
What did you think of the final turn here when the grenades slip inside the Omega in a way that's very unpleasant?
I thought that was so cool.
Detonate?
Yeah.
All of the mimics die immediately. And
in
we
a really
see
neat effect, too.
The suspended body of Cage rising through the water, being kind of buoyed up by the blood and essential juices of the Omega. And then we flash back to the beginning of the film. What do you think of that? Did you like that?
Yeah,
twist,
so
that
he gets
turn?
like one final reset because of the blood of the Omega?
I think that he gets reset to the last time that the Omega had reset the day. I think that that is the last time that the Omega had kind of used its time loop power. So he gets pushed back by, and you kind of have to just shrug your shoulders and accept that it's okay. And he goes all the way back. And you could almost see, we're leaving this open in a kind of harrowing way that even if he kills the bad guy, he's still going to be doomed to this loop. But instead we get Brendan Gleeson telling us that all of the mimics across Europe have died all at once. And this land will be reclaimed. It's kind of optimistic, except that he goes to Ratasky and we get this doubling down of bad ideas.
Yeah.
Don't go to see her. Don't narratively have her fail to recognize him. And don't then have him smirk his Tom Cruise smirk into the camera.
I know just how to manipulate and gaslight you into loving me.
There's
Don't do that.
No other way of reading that expression, right? Like,
I know.
That's exactly
I mean,
it.
I think he's supposed to just be happy to see her, but he's also clearly already thinking about their happy life on a farm.
Don't do that.
20 years from now after
you don't know this woman, and
It's
this
true.
woman does not know you. Like,
Yep.
don't do
and
that.
everything that made you work together isn't true anymore.
You could have done something really interesting about, go and find her and ask her for coffee and just say, I'd like to get to know you. Or something. Like, there are ways of aligning this that could be cute.
Still don't like it, but yeah.
You have to make him way more humble than this. You
Yeah.
have to give him, it's a real misstep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's our closing moment, and it kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
Yes.
Which is only compounded by the use of the worst song in pop music history.
Yes, it's like a terrible, terrible Bond song over a terrible Bond opening, but now it's the end.
I couldn't place it, but you are so correct. It is bad. It is like the White Stripes Bond song.
Yeah.
You're so completely
It's
correct.
Terrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is Love Me Again by John Newman.
That sounds like a Bond movie too. Love
Doesn't
Me
it?
Again. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Kill
the
me
refrain
again,
in the
maybe?
chorus
Yeah.
is, I need to know now, can you love me again?
Nope.
Gross.
Don't like it.
But then that fades away blessedly, and we get more of the Christoph Beck.
Which is cool.
His use of like pizzicato strings throughout this soundtrack, I find absolutely mesmerizing because
it's cool.
It's not what you normally do with pizzicato, right? It's not like quirky. It's just like unsettling.
Yeah.
Really, really
I left it on.
way.
I was getting drowsy at the end of the night. And again, we're fighting some kind of, malaise. So I started to like doze off a little bit as I was waiting for you to come back in. And I was like, this music is too intense. I have to turn it off if I'm going to fall asleep.
No, it's kind of upsetting. I kind of love it. Yeah.
Definitely.
There's another world in which, Beck did the music for Interstellar, and it would be like the greatest thing in the world. Not that I don't absolutely love the score for Interstellar in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Real good stuff. So that's Edge of Tomorrow. That's Live, Die, Repeat. That's All You Need Is Kill. Where are we going to put this, no matter its title, on the list of every Tom Cruise movie ever?
I don't see that there's a way that this doesn't land in that top 5. Because we have 2 Mission Impossibles in the top 5 right now, right?
It really is for me. Yes, we do. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol at 3, and Mission Impossible, the first one, at 4, ahead of The Last Samurai at 5.
Yeah.
For me, I think this is a top 3 film, honestly.
I think it might be.
I think it is. And I know that we've been nitpicking it, and I know that I'm generally unimpressed by Doug Lyman, but in every other way, this is a technical masterclass. This is like film school. This is showing you how it is done. So many aspects of the performance, so many aspects of the script. There's such incredible specificity, technical acuity across the board. The soundtrack is brilliant. The editing is among the best that I have ever seen. I think conceptually it's so interesting. I think the effects work is brilliant.
Yes, I completely agree. And the only thing that might make me have to push it to number 4 instead of number 3 is that one of the things about this list is the iconicity of the performance as Tom Cruise, and this one doesn't hold water.
It doesn't, except that it is understanding something about Cruise that has been all but forgotten, because this is the Cocktail, Rain Man, Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise, and it's been such a long time.
That's an argument.
It's been such a long time since we've had him anywhere near this list, frankly. Like, for me personally, I think the question is it number 2 or is it number 3? Does it go above or below Top Gun?
Oh, no. You cannot put it above Top Gun.
So you're arguing that it's 3 or 4? Does it go above or below Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol?
Putting it in front of, real talk. Do we think that there is going to be another Mission Impossible movie that could then push this one down from 3? In that case, I'm willing to do it.
I do not think that Ghost Protocol is my favorite Mission Impossible movie.
I agree.
I think that we have...
I think so too.
I'm going to say conservatively 2 films left in our run after Edge of Tomorrow that are going to be serious top of the list contenders. Okay.
In that case, I'm willing to go there because I just can't put this character above, like William Cage that nobody's heard of, above Ethan Hunt.
Billy Cage, everybody knows Billy Cage. We all have tattoos.
But knowing that it will eventually slip down a bit, yes, number 3. Of this list that we have now, yes. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Yes. Okay. You want ultimately Mission Impossible to be better represented on this list than Edge of Tomorrow.
Yes.
So you're confident that either Rogue Nation or Fallout or Dead Reckoning.
Yes. Right.
I think at least one of those. And I think we might be able to make arguments for 2 of those. Okay. Are probably going to beat out Edge of Tomorrow on the final list. That's an interesting point. Edge of Tomorrow may not be in our final top 5.
Which is, I hope it does, because it's really great. But we'll see.
Though, right? Yeah. Next week, we are going to be looking, Ethan Hunt is back next week on the show for the first Christopher McQuarrie entry in the Mission Impossible series, which feels impossible because we've been talking about him for 1,000 years.
Yes, true.
But he will be directing Rogue Nation. Rebecca Ferguson, Alec Baldwin, Sean Harris joining the cast, who is just terrific. After that, we get 3 weird movies in a row Then we get 3 back-to-back bangers to close out the Tom Cruise filmography.
Cool.
And we're done.
Okay.
So
until the next
I'm
Cruise
excited
movie.
to move
Yeah.
on. Would you like to thank our wonderful patrons who have made this show in particular, as we are sick, as we are lifting ourselves from our beds,
Right.
trying to record this podcast? Would you like to thank our patrons who make all of this possible?
I would, absolutely. Our heartfelt thanks to Leslie Skipa, Louise in Dallas, Megan Lauder, Phoebe, Art Kilmer, Kimberly Bear, Self on a Shelf, Jolene Stark, Chris Dawns, and the Lady Gordon.
Thank you guys so much for your support. We wouldn't be able to do this show or any of the other things we do over at Next Word without you. Speaking of which, if you would like to hear us talk for an hour, like a half hour either side of midnight, right? We recorded that real late after we got back.
You definitely on the car ride home were like, let's keep this at a half hour. I was like, oh, okay. And it was definitely an hour 10.
Before we sit down to record every podcast, I say, this will be a short one.
Yeah.
And then every time we run long.
Yep.
It's just, it's part of my complicated approach to podcasting, which is just say every idea that I have.
Yes.
And display no editorial precision whatsoever. I could not edit Edge of Tomorrow, I gotta tell you. If you would like to hear that hour-plus show where we discuss and spoil the hell out of Twisters, which is really quite good, then head on over to the Patreon page, patreon.com/nextword. Every dollar you can pledge us over there helps us make more shows. It helps us finish up this Tom Cruise series, helps me do Stars and Swords at the same time, and also helps us get ready for our Before Trilogy series coming soon to a podcast device near you. That's going to do it for this week on the show. As I say, we'll be back next week with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Can't wait to talk about that. Until then, thanks so much for listening.
We'll see you next time.